Putin sends answers to the West with intercontinental missiles on Ukraine. Will this continue to be tolerated, or will they just give the go-ahead to eliminate Putin? Let's talk to Sergey Zhirnov, a former KGB SRSR officer of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. Hello, nice to meet you. Ukraine has become the first country against which an intercontinental ballistic missile has been used. Today, the city of Dnipro was hit. The exact type of missile is still unknown, and the expert examination is still underway. But one thing is clear: the dictator's madness has no limits. In your opinion, what was it? A demonstration of strength, or rather weakness? In general, everything that concerns weapons of mass destruction, first of all nuclear weapons, is, of course, a demonstration of weakness, because strength can be shown against the strong. If Putin considers Ukraine to be a weak state that does not deserve his attention, it is nonsense. Roughly speaking, it is actually a recognition of Ukraine's strength. But so to speak, an admission that probably won't please you and me very much, and those on whom it fell. Of course, it's nice to know that Ukraine is being taken seriously. As I understand it, they used an intercontinental missile that simply delivered a kinetic strike where it struck without a warhead, because it's not a nuclear explosion. Well, it is still unknown whether it was loaded, but as Zelensky says, expert examination is underway. According to the video, our experts said that it was most likely without a warhead. That's what the former head of space said a long time ago, who claimed that we have huge space rockets, and it's possible without a warhead to just blast this very big rocket, which has a couple of tons of something imitating a warhead. Since it is an intercontinental missile, it goes into space and then comes back with terrible force. Even without a charge, the kinetic energy can create an explosion of great power. He proposed such a thing. I think even Solovyov suggested launching it in Kiev, on Bankova. Do you think they will continue to try such missiles to demonstrate to the West that they are ready to possibly launch a nuclear missile? Or was this a single strike? We don't know. Because as I said, the Russian Federation is a federation ruled by lunatics. People object to me. They say that Putin is not crazy. He is a reasonable man. He has a coherent speech. I have to say that there are a lot of crazy people with constructed speech. Crazy doesn't mean stupid in the basic sense. It can be a schizophrenic with abstruse talk, a person living in his own world, a mental patient.
Я вам должен сказать, что есть огромное количество сумасшедших людей, у которых выстроенная речь. Сумасшедший не означает глупый в таком, в базисном понимании этого слова. То есть это не дурачок деревенский, который ходит...
Putin has long been a mentally ill person, because he clearly lives in his own closed world in which our reality does not exist. And so it is impossible to predict what this sick man will do in his world.
С умудренными разговорами. Просто это человек, который живет в своем собственном мире и таким образом является психически больным человеком. Путин давным-давно является психически больным человеком.
Zakharova received a call during her briefing today asking her not to comment on the ballistic missile strike on Ukraine. On the one hand, why is this sudden?
Пресс-алкаше МИД РФ Захаровой сегодня позвонили прямо во время брифинга в прямом эфире и попросили вообще никак не комментировать удар баллистическими ракетами по Украине. Но, с одной стороны, чего бы это вдруг спикеру МИД комментировать вообще военные вопросы о том, пускают ли они ракеты по Украине или нет. Но, с другой стороны, они же должны, наоборот, налаживать добрососедские отношения с международными партнерами. Давайте мы послушаем, как все это сегодня происходило.
Да. Алло. Да, у меня брифинг. Да, хорошо, спасибо.
Не комментирую вообще. Кстати, многие начали писать, что это, скорее всего, была постановка, но Захарова уже вышла и сказала,
The Speaker of the Foreign Ministry should establish relations with partners, not remain silent. Let's listen to how it happened. Hello, don't comment at all.
Впечатление на фоне пустых разговоров Путина о том, что НАТО уже воюет с Россией.
Нет, я здесь не вижу никакого пустого трюка. То есть пустой трюк, ведь надо иметь какую-то цель, устраивать трюк, а здесь ее выставили полный, которая не самостоятельно ничего не говорит, ей просто какой-то человек...
Okay, thanks. Don't comment. By the way, a lot of people started to write that it might be a staging, but Zakharova came out and said it's not a fake, and it can be. Do you think this is a cheap trick, an attempt to impress against the background of Putin's talk that NATO is already at war with Russia? I don't see an empty stunt here. To pull off a stunt, you need a target. And here the target is to make it look like a complete stunt that says nothing. Just someone gets a phone call saying, shut up. It doesn't help the image of the Russian Federation, Zakharova, or the Foreign Ministry. Especially after the Russian ambassador to the UK said that Zakharova is the third person authorized to speak for the Russian Federation. This ambassador also said that Peskov and Medvedev are no longer officials.
Что он не является, грубо говоря, должностным лицом, представляющим Российскую Федерацию. Ну, дальше этот посол сказал, что есть три должностных лица: президент Путин, министр иностранных дел Лавров и вот это самое Захарова, которые вообще имеют право высказываться что-то от официальном уровне от лица Российской Федерации. И вот вдруг этой Захаровой, значит, звонят после этих слов. То есть вот можно, может быть, в этом смысле, может быть, какую-то конспирологию искать, потому что этот посол, значит, сказал, что, в общем, Песков уже не является таким человеком, Медведев не является таким человеком, вообще никто, ни другой, там ни Мишустин, ни Володин, никто не является такими людьми.
So maybe some apparatchik said, let us disavow this Masha Stakhan, who speaks on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. It's unclear, but in general, I think that this is clearly an unprepared thing when a person calls into a live broadcast and says, don't say anything.
Так а зачем она тогда оправдывается, что это звонок не постановка, не фейк, но если этот звонок реальный...
So then, why is she making excuses that it's not staged or fake? But if the call was real, why go out and tell everyone that it happens? I always walk around with my phone at briefings, but I don't quite understand who this circus is aimed at. You're in a ward of a mental hospital, and you're trying to ask us two normal people why crazy people act crazy. I will tell you that I am not a psychiatrist, so you should call a psychiatrist and ask why the patients in a psychiatric hospital are acting crazy. You and I are normal people, so we can't help in any way, and we can't explain it either. Sergey Olegovich, what's the reaction? And here we don't need to think anything. We just have to look at it. Because what are we going to think about the West's reaction? This is the most important thing. But the main thing is different. Please note that over the past 3 years, the West has been pursuing a reactive policy, a policy of response to the actions of the Russian Federation. That is, roughly speaking, they sit in London clubs, in Washington, in the White House, in France, in Berlin, and when Putin does something, they gather and decide how to respond. But not once has the West done anything to make Putin think twice. The only exception was this year in February, when Macron suddenly said at a conference that we do not rule out in the future the possibility of NATO troops being in Ukraine.
Путин чего-то сделает, они вот собираются и говорят, да, чем бы нам вот такой теперь ответить на это дело? И придумают какой-то ответ. Вот ни разу Запад не сделал ничего, чтобы Путин задумался. Ну вот единственное, это было там в этом году в феврале месяце, когда была пресс-конференция, и Макрон вдруг взял и сказал, что вообще-то мы не исключаем где-то в будущем возможность того, что войска НАТО окажутся в Украине. И вот вы видели, какой поднялся хайп. Вот тогда это даже было не действие.
And you saw the hype. It wasn't even an action. It was just a throwaway word ahead of the curve. The West said it through Macron, but there was not even the slightest chance of victory. The Ukrainians started fighting, and Russia ran from under Kiev, ran from under Sumy, ran from under Kharkov, ran from under Kherson, and so on. When Ukraine, for example, brought its troops into the Kursk region, the Russian Federation thought for a long time what to do. We need to change our nuclear doctrine, because if the Ukrainians continue like this, they will soon come to Moscow like Prigozhin.
Будет воевать против страны, против которой ей говорили, ну там никакой у нее даже там малейшей степени вероятности победы нету. Да, украинцы просто стали воевать, и, значит, Россия побежала из-под Киева, побежала из-под Сум, побежала из-под Харькова, побежала из-под Херсона и так далее. И потом, когда Украина, например, ввела свои войска в Курскую область, вот это тоже, значит, Российская Федерация сидела и долго думала, а что здесь делать? Вот нам надо менять теперь эту самую доктрину ядерную, потому что, видите, вот украинцы, если так не мы...
Putin will be asked to leave the Kremlin, and the West is sitting there all the time preparing a reaction. When you conduct your policy as a reaction, then accordingly it is not you who determine the agenda.
Ведете свою политику в виде реакции, то, соответственно, не вы определяете повестку дня. И Запад давно не определяет повестку дня. Запад просто пытается чего-то там худо-бедно, скорее бедно, чем и худо, чем хорошо.
The West does not set the agenda, but only tries to react to Putin's actions. It has no anticipatory policy. It is afraid to assume responsibility and the role of world leader, even Biden.
Он боится взять на себя роль лидера мирового. Вот, никто из них, у Байдена тоже, вот у него отросли, грубо говоря, фаберже только после того, когда он убедился, что он проиграл окончательно бесповоротно на всех выборах, и через 2 месяца его поганой метлой просто выгонят из Белого дома.
Everyone will forget about Biden when he woke up and decided to allow Ukraine to use weapons 3 years after the war started. This is a reaction to the North Korean military in Russia. A strike on a command post in the Kursk region left 18 dead and 33 wounded.
Северокорейских военных на территории Российской Федерации, поэтому тут уже не знаешь, кому больше не помогает. Но, кстати, 18 погибших и 33 раненых – это результаты удара по команду.
Yesterday it was destroyed, this command center of Troop Group North.
А вчера он был уничтожен, этот командный пункт группировки войск «Север».
Among the wounded are 3 DPRK soldiers. Most of the injured are officers from the southern and eastern districts. Russian media reported that the first deputy commander of the troops of the Leningrad district, Lieutenant General Salatchuk, was at the checkpoint at the time of the strike, but his condition is unknown. Was Putin even informed about these losses, where to hit Russia more painfully so that Putin would feel it? To make Putin feel this way, we need to hit the Kremlin or Novo Ogaryovo, the places where he is. Putin has disappeared from the public space. We are only shown canned food. He has run off somewhere else again. Either he ran off to celebrate somewhere, or he got drunk, or he passed out, or he went back into the refrigerator with Dmitry Solovyov and the SVR general. It's unclear where he went. But the main thing is that we haven't seen the real Putin on stage for a long time. And if we talk about where it hurts to hit, well, on the command center in Rostov, where Prigozhin came, because this is the main command center of this so-called special operation. General and a few lieutenants will die and the whole staff will die. That is, all the staff officers. It will be painful. But it won't be painful, not for Putin. For Putin, he has no pain at all. That is, except for the moment where he is physically himself, he doesn't care about the rest. What difference does it make? Roughly speaking, we sit down to play chess. We are 2 living players. We have a chessboard. If it gets there, hopefully all the staff officers will die, not just the general and a few lieutenants. It will be painful, but not for Putin. There is no pain for him except physical pain. He doesn't care about everything else. Like in chess, we play, but he doesn't care about the result.
Ему без разницы, кто погибнет, какого уровня человек погибнет, если только, вот, если мы садимся с вами играть, и вдруг там вы, допустим, достаете автомат Калашникова и говорите, а сейчас вот я тебя выстрелю там.
For Putin, war is like a game. He doesn't care about casualties as long as he doesn't go beyond the game, like pulling out the guns. He acts differently when he realizes he is losing. He takes the board and just smashes it, and the head of the player he loses to. That is, until he personally gets something in his forehead. He doesn't realize anything. He doesn't really care who dies where. Forbes reports that storm shadow strikes on the command center were strong thanks to warheads created by British firm Boya Systems. To hit underground bunkers and fortifications. The video of the arrivals was filmed near a sanatorium belonging to the Russian Presidential Affairs Directorate. The hit site is in its eastern part, where the communications center is located. Isn't Putin afraid that such missiles will fly into his other bunkers? He's not afraid, he doesn't care where the missiles will hit, unless it's his bunker. As long as he is sure that you have no missiles that can reach his bunker in Mount Emmental, where there is an underground city built under Stalin and continued under Brezhnev and Andropov, and Putin has only revived this history.
И прилететь в тот самый бункер в горе Эмментау, где у него там, значит, огромный подземный город, который начал строить еще Сталин, потом при
There, they say, is an underground city where you can hide 100,000 people from nuclear war.
Подземный город, в котором можно чуть не там 100 тысяч человек спрятать.
Here, but you don't have the kind of weapons that will fly there, so Putin isn't afraid of that.
И поэтому Путин этого не боится.
Is Putin in the mood for nuclear war? Yesterday, I was hosting a stream, and our viewers were writing in that the person who injects himself with Botox, who is very unconcerned about his health, would hardly want to die in nuclear ash. And you and I, again, are trying to use our usual human logic to talk about a madman. This madman has repeatedly proved that he is capable of making decisions that lead to directly opposite and suicidal steps. He attacked Ukraine to stop NATO from expanding, but ended up with Finland and Sweden. What stopped him? When I was asked before February 22nd whether I believed Putin would start a war, I doubted it because it was unprepared, although I was wary because of his habit of starting conflicts during the Olympics. There are 150,000 men spread across the front. They are just green men, plus a pile of scrap metal that are neither a front nor an army and cannot fight a full-scale war. But that didn't stop this crazy man from starting one. From a military point of view, it was crazy. From a military point of view, it was suicidal. Moreover, my opinion was confirmed by 3 years of experience. That is not to say that I made a mistake. I didn't make a mistake anywhere. It's just that the person made a decision that cannot be rational when analyzing the data that I was offered. I couldn't say that everything I say is wonderful, but you have to make the adjustment that this person is an idiot or a lunatic, and accordingly, he can make any decision. In 3 years, we've made sure that Putin is crazy, making illogical decisions, such as closing his own gas valve, even though he gets huge money for supplying gas to Europe, where they are ready to buy it even in times of war.
Они говорили, мы готовы покупать твой дешевый газ, никаких проблем нету, немцы всякие там, австрийцы и прочие всякие Орбаны. И вдруг Путин сам закрывает этот дверь.
Putin himself closed the gas valve, a step of a madman. Gas has nowhere to be redirected but to Europe. He himself destroyed Gazprom, which is now unprofitable and does not work.
Нормальные люди, которые пытались говорить, ну, вы знаете, он там перенаправит это в Китай, вот это все был идиотизм, потому что никуда перенаправить этот газ нельзя. И все. И Путин таким образом взял и убил самую большую свою газовую компанию, которая называется «Газпром». Она сейчас убыточная. Она сейчас не работает. Он убил
This is the decision of a madman. How could you and I, normal people, assume that a person with a normal head could make the decision to kill his own best gas company? Putin has done that. Now, when you ask me if there's anything else he can do, anything he can do, because he is crazy. You and I have repeatedly said that Russia has its own so-called war party, and there are people who have long suggested hitting Ukraine with nuclear weapons and also NATO in order to give them some kind of ultimatum or to induce Ukraine to capitulate. Some have suggested using nuclear weapons since the beginning of the war, but opponents realize that this will lead to Russia's international isolation because of the position of China and other countries of the global south. Can they influence the dictator's decision? We don't know. I have my doubts about China. I have said this many times in our conversations, because I was convinced of it until the spring of the 23rd year before Xi Jinping's first visit to Moscow. Let me remind you that Xi Jinping came to Moscow on a 3-day state visit, and Putin was very much looking forward to it. Everyone was saying that China was such a country. They were going to put pressure on Putin because they were ready to support him in everything, but not in nuclear weapons. And all of a sudden, the following happened. Xi Jinping cut his visit short by 1 day, went to a press conference with Putin, and they announced that they had signed a document on the inadmissibility of the threat to use nuclear weapons as part of the armed conflict between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. Xi got on a plane, left, and literally 5 hours later, while Xi was still in the air, returning to China, Vladimir Putin announced that he had decided to relocate Russian nuclear forces to Belarus. So he violated the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, violated the international obligations of the Russian Federation. And this was right after Xi's visit to China, when everyone was saying that China was putting pressure on Russia not to do anything in the nuclear sphere. Thus, it was clearly shown that either they were playing some kind of circus with horses in public, and in fact China told Putin, do whatever you want in the nuclear sphere, but not on our territory, preferably far away from us. Moreover, let me remind you that China has exactly the same policy.
Ведь посмотрите, Китай занимается тем, что он производит новую ядерную боеголовку каждую неделю. У него за последние 1,5 года они наклепали сколько 100.
China is producing a new nuclear warhead every month, increasing the number from 350 to about 500 in a year and a half, with the goal of reaching 1,000 by 2030. If China was against nuclear weapons, then why would it need to build up its arsenal to match Russia and the United States? All this talk, in my opinion, is about nothing. I would like to hear the reaction and then already understand how China will actually act. Trump may secretly give Ukraine nuclear weapons. The opinion was expressed by British security expert Nicholas Drummond. Trump's victory in the U.S. elections has raised concerns in Ukraine that he might offer some unfavorable and undesirable deal. But this expert believes that Trump, who has returned to the presidency, might take a different approach. A deal could be made very secretly, and suddenly, Ukraine will become very strong. Zelensky will be able to say, "We have nuclear weapons, and if you attack, we will bomb Moscow." In his words, handing over nuclear weapons to Ukraine could be Trump's trump card. How about that? What do you think about that? Well, Trump is as crazy as Putin, so we have to proceed from the fact that he himself doesn't know what he will do in 5 minutes. In that sense, he can do anything, because he has already proved that he can say anything. Another thing, by the way, is that he does not always do what he says. He can say some harsh things. Trump is often compared to Zhirinovsky, and from my point of view, it is the right comparison. Zhirinovsky never did anything in his life. He just went in front of the podium and said something. Everyone was afraid, trembled, laughed, but they laughed at his words, not at them. Zhirinovsky has never made a single state move, started any war, given a single order, and so on. Trump is about the same figure. I don't really believe this story because few people share nuclear weapons at all. The United States of America, in this sense, does not give nuclear weapons to anyone. It's like underwear. They won't give them to a neighbor, even a friend. They give you everything to wear, but they don't give you their underwear. So I doubt very much that this can happen. It's just speculation. Especially since, in fact, the military doctrine that Putin has just adopted already stipulates that if a nuclear state does something for a non-nuclear state, it will consider it as an action by a nuclear state. That is, if some American nuclear weapon ends up in Ukraine, Putin will assume that it is an American nuclear weapon and that America has started its response to his actions. He will assume that America has entered into a nuclear war with him. In this nuclear doctrine, by the way, even in its previous version, it was written down that in such a case, Putin could respond with a nuclear strike, even a preemptive nuclear strike. I don't believe in that situation at all. But basically, Trump has already said that he has a plan B. When asked how he was going to end the war in 24 hours, he said, "I'm going to call Zelensky, tell him to end it, and he'll agree." He was told, but there are two sides to the war. There's also Putin. To which Trump said, "I'm going to call Putin and say, stop it. And if he doesn't stop it, I'm going to give Ukraine 10 times what Biden was giving Ukraine to smash the hell out of Putin." It seems to me that this version is much more realistic than speculation about the transfer of American nuclear weapons to Ukraine. It is unclear what model Trump will propose, but if he demands that Putin withdraw troops from Ukraine, will Putin agree? And does Trump have enough credibility to influence Putin? No, Trump is not the definitive authority for Putin. And in general, there is no great authority for Putin that he bows down to. Putin behaves like a little boy, boring everyone. And then, for example, she says, "Vova," to the leg, and Putin immediately changes. But he doesn't behave like that with Trump, showing that he can be rude to him too. It is more dangerous to lambaste Trump than Xi or Biden, because Trump is as backstabbing as Putin, with a gangster mob mentality. In that sense, Trump is actually aware that he is in charge of a country that produces 10 times more economically than the Russian Federation and has 10 times more military power than Russia, except for parity in nuclear weapons. But there is also parity between Russian Federation and the United States in nuclear weapons. And Trump is the most important person to utilize that capability. Biden didn't even question whether it was necessary to use the full potential of the United States to scare Putin, but Trump can do it. And in that sense, he is unpredictable for Putin. Here. But Putin, I have already told you that Putin is an absolutely crazy and absolutely suicidal man who has gone into his own reality. In this reality, there is no one who compares to him in greatness. Putin has gone into space. Putin has been on Mars for a long time. He thinks he is the only person on the planet who sets the agenda for everyone. To put it harshly, what this man really needs is for someone in the physical world to just meet him, just in person, and just punch him in the face once. That's it. He'll be fine. Or for a psychiatrist to come up to him, inject him with some kind of sedative drug, put a straitjacket on him. There's nothing else against Putin. So Putin can either be killed or put in some kind of prison. But who will decide? What kind of psychiatrist? I frankly don't understand the other thing. And so, you asked me a question. Well, let's go back to him. Here in Russia, is there not a single normal person with money and power who understands where this crazy suicidal man is taking them all? That is, he is taking them all to the grave with him. The man who said in 2018 with absolute conviction that if there is such a war, meaning a nuclear war, they will all just die and we will be in paradise. Which is to say, are there any Putinins, Deripaskis, and other sections who realize that all their billions, all their wealth, depend on the decision of one little man who has just gone cuckoo? You know, I was recently interviewed, and I was reminiscing about all sorts of fairy tales by Kornei Ivanovich Tchaikovsky. And here's a fairy tale about a cockroach. It's a wonderful fairy tale in which everyone at the time saw a hint of Stalin. So the cockroach, which frightened bears, lions, rhinoceroses, giraffes, all the big animals, all ran away. And suddenly a little sparrow flew in, just pecked it, ate it, and that was it. Suddenly everybody realized that there was no cockroach and there was no danger. That is, in this crazy country there must be some reasonable people who will say, my goodness, we all with our families, with our mistresses, with our palaces, with our yachts, with our billions, can burn in nuclear ashes because of some, excuse me, old man who just went crazy. Just kill him physically, and that's it. Most of the issues will be solved. Look, there was the Korean War in 1953, when Stalin died and the Korean War ended. Now we are in exactly the same situation. It is a war of one man, absolutely one man, Putin. There are, of course, a few more old people like him around him, the Petrushevs, the Lavrovs, the Bratukovalchukis, something else, but there are not so many of them, only a dozen people. There are thousands of sane people in the Russian Federation who have money, structures, power, anything. But these people don't realize that 10 crazy people can kill absolutely everyone. That's when they will finally realize it. Where is this sparrow? Really big money these people have, but somehow they can't use it to hire a super hitman or bribe Putin's security guards so someone will finally kill him. In 1953, when Beria came to power, there were 10 such people around Khrushchev. Secretary of Defense. And others arrested Beria at a Politburo meeting and 6 months later killed him without a trial. Similarly, when Khrushchev went cuckoo in 1964, he was simply dismissed at a plenum of the Central Committee.
его тогда просто вызвали на заседание пленума ЦК и просто отстранили от власти. Его даже не надо было убивать, потому что уже времена изменились. Его, кстати, даже не посадили, его просто отправили копать.
He didn't need to be killed. Times had changed. He wasn't even jailed, just sent to dig potatoes at his dacha. Putin will not agree to this, and neither will Patrushev, who periodically appears with delusional statements about the invincibility of the Black Sea Fleet.
Статьями и несет полный бред о том, что Черноморский флот самый непобедимый Черноморский флот в мире, вообще ничего не происходит, и вообще благодаря огромной мощи военно-морского флота Российской Федерации
nothing happens at all. And in general, thanks to the enormous power of the Russian Navy, the NATO fleet has not penetrated the Caspian Sea. People look at the globe of the Earth, they look at the Caspian Sea, a closed sea where there are no NATO countries. Even Turkey does not go to it. Iran and Azerbaijan are in this sea. So where did he see a NATO flotilla that could penetrate this closed sea? Such people sit in the Kremlin around Putin. Where are the normal ones who, after years of rule, can show reason? I don't understand this country and people who do nothing. Thank you, Sergey Olegovich, for taking the time to be on the air. I remind you that Sergey Zhirnov was with us. Give us a like, write a comment, and indicate where you are watching us from.
Вы обязательно поставьте свой лайк, напишите комментарий в поддержку нашего стрима, ну и, конечно же, не забывайте указывать.
Thank you all for your attention. Take care, and see you all later.